than your currency. Splurging millions, buying houses like Monopoly. Fucking 9 to 5, man, the money is a joke to me. Buying cryptocurrency, my money in the privacy.
Hey guys and girls, welcome to this week's episode of the Birchy podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Birch. This is a show unraveling the truth to the facade of the 21st century. We're now exiting the matrix and waking up to motherfucking reality. Today, got a couple of really cool topics I want to fit into a very short podcast so you get all the juicy stuff and none of the waffle around with Nathan today. So today, I want to talk about two parts of this. The first one is why I think it's important to aim to have $3 million worth of asset to be able to retire in 2022, and this will, if you could capture that in 2022 and take that through any money cycle or any market, that would be important. And also how money is losing its value and how the assets stack up. So starting off with why it's important to have $3 million. So if you had $3 million worth of asset and you're getting a 10% return, that's 300 grand a year worth of cash flow. That's a pretty good chunk of income to have. If you had $3 million and you get a 5% return, you're getting 150 grand. That's still very good. The average wage in the country is about $70,000 at the moment. That is rising because cost of life is rising, inflation is rising, and that's the hidden part where people don't realise what happens out there, and it's just the erosion of their currency and the money that they had. So if you had $3 million worth of asset, and let's say everything goes up by 10%, that $3 million turns to $3.3 million, goes up another, let's say it doubles, it goes from 3 million to 6 million, and just compounds the effect and goes throughout history. But if you have that cash flow and that cash flow is equally going up, well then all your expenses such as mortgages and stuff like that get stuck into today's dollars and the rents keep increasing, but your loans don't keep increasing. So I think it's very important, if you could have an outright position of $3 million worth of assets invested into whatever at 10%, that's 300 grand a year. At 5%, it's 150, very conservative sort of numbers. Ideally, if you could just go out and buy 10 properties at 300 grand, that would get you $3 million worth of asset, but then how do you pay down that debt? One could be a debt consolidation in the future where you use the profits of the rents to pay out the mortgages, which is what I'm doing with my personal portfolio. I've held on for so long. The debts are really nothing, the expenses are really nothing, but the cash flow coming through every week, every month is paying down that debt. If you go back to 1990, you will see that you could retire on $500,000 in cash or $500,000 worth of asset. But the problem is that the cost of money has been reduced so much. It's very easy and very cheap to get money out there, and that has caused lots of inflation over the last 3 decades since 1990. And $500,000 won't get you too far. It'll be a half deposit, or be a deposit for a property in Sydney or something like that. So if we go back, 30 years ago, what would $500,000, if you put $500,000 into the bank and you would have got a 10% return on that, 10% return on $500,000 would have been 50 grand a year. 50 grand a year would have been like having $150,000 in 2022. So the money buys you less, the returns are diminished. Like if you put $500,000 in the bank today at 0.5%, you're going to be getting $2,500 per year, and that's not going to buy you anything now. So cash is trash, understand that. Paying out debt is really irrelevant. And looking at the power of having assets. Doesn't matter whether it's shares, doesn't matter if it's property, doesn't matter what it was, doesn't matter if it's old beat up Datsun 1600s. They've all gone up with inflation. So the worst investment to have held on to for 30 years would have been having cash. The best investment would have been anything else apart from cash. But something greater than having something that's apart from cash is having something that's got a cash flow that gets inflated away as well. So ideally, if you could just buy $3 million worth of property today, let's say that you had a debt on it at $3 million at 3%. So $3 million times 3%, that'd be $90,000 per year. That's what your interest bill would be. If you were getting a rental return on, say, 10 properties at, say $400 a week, that's a very basic sort of yield. Say $350 a week times 10, that's $3,500 per week. That's about $190,000 per year. You've got about $100,000 spread there. You've got council, water, insurance policies, real estate fees, all that sort of stuff. So it might be a neutral cash flow position. But once you hold that portfolio of 10 properties, 15 properties in your position, that debt at $3 million is stuck at today's value. The assets go up with inflation, the cash flow goes up with inflation. So if you just had 10 properties, and I know probably 90% of our community where I help my investors on a day-to-day basis have built their portfolios over the last decade. If they took 10 of their properties, 15 of their properties, which is very, very real fact that's happened in the last 2 or 3 years with rent increases, rents have gone up by $100 a week in a lot of locations that we've been buying in. So a lot of my investors that have 10 properties have got 10 properties that were costing them nothing to hold already, but now they've got an extra $100 a week times 10. That's $1,000 a week. That's $50,000 a year. So out of nowhere, they've taken this $3 million worth of asset. The first thing, if they didn't accumulate the asset base, they wouldn't have anything to work with right now. First step is to get the assets, and then it's to take it through those market cycles and realize how inflation works and those assets perform and outperform money. So cash is trash. Just remember that, right? If you put your $3 million, if let's say you had $3 million and you put it in the bank today and you got 1%, you'd get $30,000 a year, right? You'd have to save up, be extorted from the government by paying the taxes on earning that $3 million. By the time you pay all those taxes, you get a measly $30,000 per year, which wouldn't do too much for you in 2022. Where in 1990, if you just had $500,000, which doesn't buy you much when it comes to property, or that today, you would have had in the bank, but your cash flow would have been good back in the 1990s, but today it's not. And that's just the evolution of currencies. They always fail, they always go to zero, and they always lose their value. And I want to take it to the next step and look at, I was talking to someone about this just earlier on today about my portfolio, and it's something, a light bulb clicked on in my head. And I thought to myself, if my property portfolio is worth $150 million, net worth, what is that worth, right? How would I be able to save up and build a portfolio worth $150 million today? I'll tell you how you won't be doing that. If I had to go and earn an average wage, let's call it $70,000 per year, to earn $150 million, this is without eating, spending a cent of it, paying taxes, nothing. If I had to save $70,000 a year, it would take me 2,142 years to save up $150 million. Paying out mortgages, debt, money, how did Nathan end up in that position? How did a lot of my investors go and build a $15, $20 million portfolio, and they're just average everyday people? They had a strategy, they had a plan of attack, they were committed, they knew how things worked, they made educated, calculated decisions in order to buy the right assets to then be able to build that asset base up, and understanding how inflation works, that's how they became successful. So, we're in a world that's changing a lot at the moment. We've got a lot of weird things going on. We've got the media telling us that interest rates are going to go up. We've got all the regulators saying interest rates are going to go up. All these experts telling you certain things. People coming out saying, house prices will fall by 20%, 30%, 40%. I've heard this for the last 2 decades since I bought my first property. It's something that just comes out as rhetoric. If we go back to 2020, we were told that property prices would fall by 40%. Everything's going to crash. Cash out, get your cash now is very, very important. What has transpired is that the purchasing power of the cash has diminished. Doesn't matter whether you're looking at cars, whether you're looking at food, whether you're looking at a house, whether you're looking at shares, whether you're looking at Bitcoin, whatever it is, your cash has underperformed dramatically. All these experts will come from time to time. They may or may not have assets. You need to make sure that you're getting the right knowledge, you're getting the right understanding of what's happening out there. I see a lot of people going to get slaughtered in this current coming crisis. There's going to be a very short-term economic crisis, and that's the opportunity that is out there. What I mean by the economic crisis that we're seeing, what we've seen in a 10-year cycle, right, with interest rates going up and markets adjusting and certain things like that, they don't matter anymore. But that 10-year window, I think, will be condensed down to 1 year to 2 years. That's why we're going to see the inflation just compounding on itself. What I mean by that is you've got all these people out there saying interest rates are going to go up. They're going to go up 1%, go up by 2%, go up by 3%, go up by 4%. We need to understand how this shit works. I'm going to use this last little bit of the podcast today to talk about how it works and how it's impossible for interest rates to go up too high or, in the market. So where does money come from? We know where the money comes from. It's just printed, it's digits. It comes from the RBA, the central banks around the world. They buy up bonds, and those bonds, they pay a yield and a dividend, and they are put in the market, and people are given the liquidity from that. What we've got to understand is who has most amount of debt. Everybody on the news, on the TV, all these punters that are out there buying the property space, I don't know, their egos must be so big thinking that, the property market's all around me or whatever, right? Reality is that there is a financial system that's so far greater than the property market, you guys have no idea, right? And if you break it down into the littlest pieces, you can see how, it's a fragment of the larger economy. So as an average punter would go out and go get a home loan, they might pay 2%, 3%, 4%, 5%, whatever they're paying for a mortgage. That's what you're paying. That's not what a company's paying. That's not what Woolworths, Coles, governments, that's what people around the world are paying. I'd say about 70% of the debt out there in the markets, 80% of the debt out there in the markets is not for homeowners. It might be 20, 30%. The rest of it is corporations, governments. The government just took out nearly $1 trillion worth of debt, right, in the last year. With that $1 trillion debt, what are they paying? They're getting bonds, right? So how does finance work for the other 70 or 80% of the world, the people that you don't see, that you're just out there paying 5%, 4%, 3%, worrying about your weekly expenses? What the other half is paying, there's a thing called a BBSW, so it's a bank bill swap rate. So I was actually talking to one of my clients the other day that's in the building industry, and they were talking about the facility, and I was like, what interest rate are you going to? What's the cash rate at the moment? It's a 1% on top of that, right? So what a bank bill swap rate is that they will take the cash rate, the bank will take the cash rate and go, is 0.1%. Let's just get this really clear. 10 basis points is 0.1 of 1%. 1% is 100 basis points. So at the moment, for those of you that aren't aware, the RBA's interest rate is 10 basis points. So it's 10% of 1%. So the person that would have the bank bill swap rate would be 0.1 of a percent, and then they pay the bank a premium over the top of that of 1%. So their loan would be 1.1%. They're not paying 2%, 3%, 4%, 5%. Like you guys are. They're paying a much cheaper rate. It could be a 1.2% margin over the cash rate. So it could be 1.3%, 1.4%, whatever it is. Just understand, go and research what a bank bill swap rate is, right? Just understand what that is. So once you realize that there's a lot more debt than what there is in the property market, yes, they can jack up interest rates, they can get people scared, whatever, and that's where they're making their profits from, is by doing that, right? They're getting people scared, locking them in fixed interest rates, pushing up those fixed interest rates, creating a market, creating greater profits for the banks, right? Just be very careful of this. If they put the interest rate up from the central bank from 10 basis points to 100 basis points, which is only 1%, really, like who cares? It goes up 1%, who cares, right? If you are over leveraged, right, and you don't have good cash flow, you haven't bought good assets, you've been speculating, you've been punting, thinking that this market's going to go on forever, well, you could get yourself into trouble. But if you are a diligent, sophisticated investor going out there buying properties at, 200 grand, 300 grand, let's say you've got a 200 grand loan and the interest rate goes up by 1%, oh wow, the interest rate's gone up $2,000 a year, $40 a week. Just put the rent up, right? Everyone's rent's going up. There's inflation happening out there in the rents. It's not going to affect you too much. Let's think about the big end of town. Let's think about a bank. Let's think about a corporation. Let's think about whoever has to take up those different commercial facilities. Let's assume they're paying 10 basis points and it goes to 1%. That means that they're paying 10 times more at the central bank, right? 10 basis points to 100 basis points, 10 times the bill's gone up. But then when you add the margin on top, someone's rate at 1.5% will go to 2.5%. We're going to see corporations starting to drown if the interest rates go up by 1%. And if it goes up to 2%, well, there we go. Interest rates have now gone up 3 times for those people. So it's going to be a much more amplified position than what it is for the average day, everyday mum and dad that's out there getting a loan. So understanding how these other financial instruments work out there in the market, when you sit there and go, okay, well, what happens if this was to occur? If we ended up into a deflationary cycle, we would see, stuff at Bunnings come down in price, stuff at Woolworths come down in price. But hang on a second, wages have gone up, fixed costs have gone up, all these things have gone up. That's going to cause everyone to go bankrupt. we're either going to have the biggest depression that you're ever going to see. And when I say depression, right, it's going to leave 1929 for dead, right? We're going to have the massivest depression that we're going to see, and we're going to see that sometime in the next decade, right? Is it going to happen now? I don't believe so. I believe that the actions that they're taking, and it's evident in the countries that are pushing their cash rate up, they're getting stuck right now. So the yields, which, like, let's say for instance, you have 100 grand you put in the bank, right? If you were to put it away for 3 months, you'd get less than what it would be for 6 months or 12 months. The longer you put your money away, the larger the return that you would get. If you look at the bonds around the world, all the countries that have put their interest rates up at the central banks, what has happened is we've seen a thing called an inverted yield curve, which means that the longer the loan is, the smaller the amount of money is that's getting paid, which causes a liquidity issue, and all the funds go to one end of the market, not the other end of the market. So what they have to do, and this is what they did last time, which is when the this is what happened in 2019, in September 2019, when the repo market imploded, which is the repurchasing agreements of short-term lending. They had to come in and that to re-liquidify the market, and that's when they started dropping interest rates and injecting liquidity into the system. The banks are prepared for negative interest rates. So if you've got savings in the bank, you're going to be able to buy less and less with that. It's going to end up costing you money to have money in the bank account, like a storage fee. So a lot of people are going to not know where to turn to in this market. A lot of people are going to think they're an expert. A lot of people are going to listen to the news. That's why everyone's controlled in a system. That's why there's people out there achieving cool things, because they're understanding how it works. There's a lot of people that listen to fluff, listen to gossip, and get caught in the clickbait from the media. Make sure that you're getting the right education. Make sure that the decisions that you're making are based on logic, not based on what he said, she said, the media said, the people that said, who trusted the media in the last 2 years, and now you're telling me you trust it now. Looking at out there, it's important to understand, can interest rates go up? Yes, they can. How far can they go up? What is the real ramification of that? Most importantly, all of these things are manipulated. There's only one thing manipulating. It's not the property being manipulated. It's not international people buying your property. It's an issue. It's not that there's not enough properties out there. It's a fact that there's too much money in the system. They keep printing this money, and they have to keep printing this money. It's going to make the money more and more worthless, and it's going to keep increasing the price of those assets. Doesn't matter if it's the microphone that we're using, doesn't matter if it's the laptop we're using, the camera we're using, everything will keep increasing as it does, because that's how the system is set up and designed. So on that note, my point being at the start of this podcast is, $300,000 at a 5% return in today's market, that's $150K. That's a decent wager today. Inflation hits it, the rents go up, the prices go up, have a happy life. If you're getting 10%, it's going to go up even greater. When you start running projections based on how many properties you could have, how much inflation you could have to the rents and to all those sort of things, you start seeing a very fun picture. That's where my life is at the moment. And it was just an interesting exercise when I sat there and I thought, okay, $150 million divided by $70,000, it's 2,142 years. I'd have to have been born before Jesus would have, 100 years before that, 150 years before that, and not spend a cent for the last 2,000 years and still be standing here to go, okay, cool, now I can spend $1 of my money because I've saved it up. Assets are the key, cash is trash. If you need help with that, you can contact us, 1300-367-925, send us an email, click on the links below, make sure that you like, share, subscribe. Check us out next week on Spotify, Google Play, Facebook, and YouTube. We'll catch up soon. Have a great day. Bye for now.
Like Bilal said, man, we're stuck in the matrix. This my advice, don't care if you take it. The dollar about to die, soon to be hyperinflated. This my 2 cents, don't care if you save it. Joint be decentralized and you will see you been lied to the whole time, and it's the irony, cause they do the exact opposite. You become a slave to the system, enough your money, all they do is profit. There's no conspiracy theory, you better hear me. Crypto will set you free before the system does. I don't care if you do or you don't, but what I'm saying is the truth to the reason you choke. I never been a failure, excuse my behavior. Keep talking, haters doing me a favor. They all telling lies, I know what they been telling you. I'm the opposite, like Donald Trump of Australia. It's amazing, here for the taking, my time is never wasted. Yes.